So this is a chapter that I'm going to find tremendously difficult to discuss. This chapter was obviously very difficult. There was a lot to it. Oda really shone a spotlight on how dark and evil this world can be, and the celestial dragons, our enemies, truly are, which he's been doing throughout the duration of the flashback. But it was also an incredible chapter, one that hit me extremely hard and that well deserves to be unpacked. So, starting off by mentioning Oda's note at the beginning of the chapter that he was unable to finish the chapter. Honestly, it still looks incredible. I think there are a lot of small panels. There are a lot of really emotionally intense panels, so likely this was a chapter that required a lot more from him than what's normal. And even with it being unfinished, it still looks really incredible. There's still so much happening in this chapter, and the panels that are more raw, I guess if it's gonna happen in a chapter, then this is the one, because it was such an emotionally raw chapter as well. But also, I really hope that Oda is taking the breaks that he needs. If he needs more breaks than just one a month, I hope he'll just continue to take them. He took more breaks than normal recently during the live action launch. I hope that he'll just keep doing that. Like, he can keep a lighter schedule if that's what he needs. I'm not really interested in jumping to conclusions. I just hope he's taking care of himself. So getting into an extremely difficult chapter, but before we dive into the details of it, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Factor. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen, dietitian approved meals right to your doorstep. Their team of gourmet chefs create each meal using only ingredients with integrity to help you feel your best all day long. Life is busy, and I am really bad midday at lunchtime to make a quick, nutritious meal. I usually pick one or the other. And with the holidays, it gets even worse because I'm even more busy and the kids are out of school. With Factor, you can skip the extra trip to the grocery store, the chopping, the prepping, the cleaning, while still getting tons of flavor and nutritional quality you need. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes or 7 minutes if you cook them in the oven like I do. So all you have to do is heat and enjoy. I genuinely get so excited to eat a Factor meal because they are loaded with flavor and just so easy, so convenient to heat up. Plus, they have an assortment of 45 plus add-ons to suit various preferences and tastes. You can have breakfast items like apple cinnamon pancakes, bacon and cheddar egg bites, and potato, bacon and egg breakfast skillet. Or for a wellness boost, you can try their beverages like cold pressed juices, shakes, and smoothies. And they always serve really tasty veggies on the side to complement the protein. So head to factor75.com or use the link in my description and use the code Murphy50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Thank you, Factor, for sponsoring this video, and thank you to you for checking them out. So last chapter, Jinny got abducted. We don't know who by, or we didn't know who by. There were some guesses made, and some people did guess celestial dragons. I don't know why, but I assumed enslavement. I didn't assume sexual enslavement. It has been alluded to more than once throughout the duration of this series that is part of what the celestial dragons participate in. We've seen Boa and her sisters and their memories endure some terrible traumas related to this. We've seen when I think it was in Sabaody Archipelago when one of the celestial dragons said, you know, I'll have her as my wife. And there was some resistance, so he just killed her husband, I want to say, and then just said, take her away. And she was taken away against her will. So the celestial dragons enslaving people to the position of spouse isn't new to the series. But in this flashback, we've really shown a strong spotlight on reminding us of the atrocities of the celestial dragons, reminding us of how atrocious, how horrible, how inhumane they treat others because they view themselves as above everyone else, and reminding us of who we're opposing and why. And in this, we've watched them go on literal manhunts, hunting down and slaughtering natives of a land for sport. We've watched them enslave and brutalize people for no reason other than because of their bloodline. And we've watched them now enslave them in this category as well. So after Jinny was abducted, Kuma became reckless. It says, "You've been pushing yourself too hard ever since then." And this back and forth that Oda does throughout the duration of this entire chapter of looking at the flashbacks, remembering when she was abducted, what happened. She was taken on a government ship to be that celestial dragon's wife. Our unit was wiped out by a surprise attack. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Having that flashback, Kuma's memory of losing the woman that he loved, the woman that he couldn't be with because he didn't want her to be enslaved, follow and flipping back and forth between that and the freedom that they're delivering other people. That contrast of, I didn't give her the future we wanted because I wanted to keep her away from slavery, but now she's enslaved anyway, and we're freeing people groups and liberating them of the very treatment that my love, that the person I care about is currently suffering. That back and forth is incredibly effective of showing the fight that they're fighting and how noble it is, but also showing the tragedy that just because you're fighting doesn't mean, and just because you're succeeding doesn't mean that others aren't still trapped and suffering. And in this case, someone that we've become very close to. We haven't had much time with Jinny. We haven't had much time with Jinny, but we have seen her be a defender of Kuma when he's kind and tender and sensitive and he's being mistreated by other kids, so she beats him up. We see her being a defender of Kuma when he is giving so much of himself for other people's ailments, taking on their ailments to himself so that they can survive another day. And she's keeping them from taking advantage of him. She's keeping him from giving too much of himself to people. And then also crying on the floor with him while he suffers when he takes on their pain. We've seen her be instrumental in one of the greatest incidents in the world and instrumental in freeing herself and Kuma and Aiba. We've seen her be a liberator herself. We know that she was a commander in the Revolutionary Army. We know that she was a strong, powerful, kind-hearted, feisty person, and I wish we had just a few more chapters with her because I feel like she's been given so much in these few chapters. She's been given so much characterization, but she's been given so little time for me to know her and to breathe with who she is. And honestly, can you imagine how hard this is for the Revolutionary Army, that not only is Jinny one of their commanders and a powerhouse and an intellect that they could use around every corner, I'm sure, but also she's Aiba's sister. I mean, probably not by blood, but you know, sister, and Kuma's love, and she's a part of this family. She's a part of this nakama, and for 2 years she was there. For 2 years she was left to suffer in the hands of the celestial dragon. For 2 years she was enslaved sexually. Like, how do you get through every single day of those 2 years not doing everything in your power to get her back? And I'm sure that if they tried to storm the castle, if they tried to go into this where the celestial dragons were and take her back, it would have been incredibly risky. They could have risked all of their projects. They could have risked all of the good that they were doing. But can you imagine having to make that call to leave her there so that the greater plan can succeed? I can't imagine making that call. So Jinny calls the Revolutionary Army. She tells them, hey, I'm back. I got 6C. They didn't want me anymore. They dumped me off. Lucky me, huh? I really wish I could see you all, but this is me saying goodbye. I'm sorry, Kumachi. I'm dying. It won't be long now. I appreciate your concern, but don't come looking for me. Dragon, big bro, watch over Kumachi. He's too kind for his own good. And Kumachi, just remember, I'll always love you. But he didn't even hear the last words because he pawpawed himself away to get to her because he knew exactly where she would go. She would go back to their home because he already knew. He didn't need to hear the words, I'll always love you. He knew because he knew that she would go to their home. And she knew. She traveled across the sea, sacrificed the last of her life, surrendered the last of her life to bring her baby there because she knew, without having to hear it, without needing Kuma to say a word, she knew that he would take care of that child. That he would see that child for what she was, not a world noble, not a celestial dragon, an innocent life that needed protecting. And again, this back and forth between the flashbacks and the current day, seeing her being hungry and eating and being satisfied, her asking him to marry him as he's carrying her body, her saying, "I'll make you happy," while he weeps over her life lost. And of all the wonderful things that Jinny has done in these few short chapters, of all the accomplishments that we've been told that she has made, this to me is quite possibly the most noble one that she's done. That she had a little life left and she pushed it all aside. She said, "I'll give it all up if I can get my child out of there. If I can get my child out of the hands of the celestial dragons and I could put her in the hands of the man who will view her as an innocent life and protect her and raise her." And she didn't have to ask, she knew, because that's who Kuma is. "Don't worry, Jinny, I'll raise your daughter." So we see him fumbling as a new dad, trying to feed her, really needing to get a steel cage so he doesn't roll over her while he's sleeping, crying over how much he loves her. And again, the back and forth is so effective. Seeing him feeding her, fighting, bathing her, fighting, sleeping beside her, fighting Sabo. He's fighting to protect this precious, precious life that this woman loved. And he's also fighting to protect the lives of those who need a defender. But when push comes to shove and he finds out that Bonnie has the same terminal illness that Jinny had, he has to surrender one or the other, and he chooses his kid. "I don't know what to do, but I want to be with her." Very well, this is Dragon. Live without regrets. Something that I've been going over in my mind is that it's possible that as far as her disease, I know the implication here is that she contracted this disease from the celestial dragons because of the slavery that she has been forced into. But I wonder if, so do you remember with Boa, her and her sisters were given their devil fruits as a game? As just like a sick, I'm entertained by your suffering kind of situation. And again, in Sabati Archipelago, we saw one of the celestial dragons say, "I'll take her as my wife," and he already had, a dozen wives that he had already captured and taken, and somebody mentioned it and he was like, "I'm tired of them, so just discard them, get rid of them." So we know how cavalierly they will abduct wives and then discard them as well. So I do wonder if this disease that Jinny received wasn't necessarily contracted, but instead was given as a sick, "Okay, I'm done with her. She fights me too much. She resists too much. Whatever it is, I'm done with her. So let me just give her this disease that will get her, I'll cast her aside, but I'll also make sure that she suffers and dies. Because if I am done with her, I'm not letting the world have her. I'm not letting her live happily, freely again. She's displeased me. I want to disease her so that her life ends. But it's not just like execute her. It's like, let me revel in your suffering because this is more entertaining to me." And potentially, if she was given whatever it is that would cause her to have this disease, if she was given that while pregnant with Jinny, then with Bonnie, if she was given that while pregnant with Bonnie, then it's possible that that's how Bonnie ended up getting it as well, just latent. I'm very articulate today. This is a very emotional chapter. I don't know, this chapter just really reminded me of Boa's past, and so it just made me think it's possible that it's more of their sick games that kind of keep coming up. So now we see Bonnie getting picked on and ostracized by other kids because of her illness. We see her being fierce and feisty and defending herself, and we see Kuma being sweet and gentle and doting and not wanting her to risk anything that could potentially let the sunlight hit her and cause her lifespan to shrink. I love this interaction here where she says, "They made fun of my stones again. Is it that weird? It's a disease. I can't help it." And he goes, "What, your jewels? They're just jealous because it makes you look so beautiful." First of all, I love Kuma, and I love the way he handles her and the way he makes her feel valued and loved for her uniqueness instead of like she's some creature, some weirdness for her illness. But I also love that that's how she got the name Jewelry Bonnie, that when she attacks people and messes with their lifespan, jewels are a participant in that attack. Jewels come out of whatever is happening when she messes with their lifespan. And jewels are the sign that her lifespan is being drastically messed with. And once again, I'm back to thinking about the fact that the devil fruits and the person seem to match a lot of times. They seem to reflect the character that they're a part of a lot of times. What that means, I don't know, but it certainly does seem to be a pattern. I don't know if the devil fruits kind of look different in each person, depending on who they're connected with. Like the core of what the devil fruit is the same, but maybe it manifests a little bit differently. It looks a little bit differently depending on the person, because Bonnie's sickness is completely apart from the devil fruit, yet the devil fruit causes jewels to come out when it's happening. And that's very specific to Bonnie's sickness. So I feel like the devil fruit and the person kind of become one in certain ways. We have Kuma asking Bonnie, after you're cured, if you went on a trip, where would you go? And then they make all these plans for their future. Bonnie brings up sun god Nika, that he must be in the Sky Islands. You've got Kuma doing the dance and going dum da da dum da da dum, or whatever it is. That's how it is in my head. And there's definitely some strong parallels about the fact that we have this young girl being kept in the darkness and being told about the legends of the sun god Nika, who will liberate them. And then we get the news that Bonnie's terminal illness is incurable, and in fact that she has about 5 years left to live. Now, this was intentional, that we don't get the information that she's or we don't get the confirmation that she's actually a child in just aging herself up. We don't get this revelation until the same chapter that we find out that she's supposed to only live until she's 10. Yet now we know that she's 12, which means that this incurable disease, something has happened. Two things that were pointed out to me in the stream, because you know I didn't make any theories because I was too busy being hysterical. One, that Kuma traded his free will to cure her, which I think thematically would really tie into everything that we've been doing here, that he surrenders his free will to give Bonnie freedom from the thing that is taking her life away from her. Or that Kuma pawpawed her illness away and then took it on himself, and that's why he ended up being cyborged, because he was now going to die in a few years. Both of these theories I think would work really well for what's going on right now in the story, but I do know that we have a little bit more flashback to go before we get back to present day. And while there's still a lot of things that we need to go over in this flashback before we're completely done, when we do get back, I'm even more invested in seeing both Bonnie and Kuma get the reveal that sun god Nika is standing among them, that sun god Nika is here, the liberator that they've been waiting on, the liberator that they have through all this suffering, that they have put their hope in, is here. And they probably are going to get to watch sun god Nika take down the very beings that have caused so much pain and suffering in their lives. And I know that I say all the time that my favorite fights are the ones where all the Straw Hats come together, work together like Thriller Bark, and help take down the big bad. And sure, Luffy throws the final punch, but it's not, okay, all the Straw Hats get relegated to lesser enemies to tie them up and give more fights, and then Luffy faces the big bad, but everybody works together to face the big bad. I know I say that, and I still believe it. All I'm saying is that in this instance, I'm the most, although I still want the whole crew to fight together, I'm the most excited to watch Luffy throw that punch. Because one, the celestial dragons are putrid, and we all want to see them taken down. But two, Kuma and Bonnie deserve to see the one that they've been waiting for take down the enemy that has harmed them and begin the liberation that they've been waiting for. 1 year later, the king who split the kingdom in half and caused all these problems 16 years ago, he's now back and he's slaughtering people in the streets. So this may be where Kuma gets his tyrant epitaph. Did I say that right? Where Kuma gets his tyrant title is when he potentially slaughters the king and takes over, or slaughters the king, slaughter is too, kills the king and then maybe is given power, and it's kind of twisted into he's a tyrant by the people who were once benefiting from the king, who was the true tyrant, and they were benefiting from his tyrannical reign. And now Kuma comes in and brings justice, and so he's given this title by the people who were benefiting from the corrupt ruler previously. That's kind of where I'm seeing this going in the next chapter. I know people are speculating over who Bonnie's dad is, and I know that a common thought is Saturn, which does make a lot of sense because he knew how old Bonnie was. He kept calling her a little girl. He kind of shoved her aside. He didn't care to kill her, even though she could have been killed very easily. He allowed her to stab him instead of killing her when she tried to attack him. So there's a lot of signs that there's like something there, but the truth is I kind of don't want to know. I kind of want it to stay nebulous, because a big thing that Oda has been doing with this flashback is, again, I keep saying it, is pointing us to the atrocities that the celestial dragons have committed so that we are reminded of who we're up against and why we're fighting this fight. So with us not knowing who Bonnie's dad is, that just kind of leaves us projecting at the atrocities of the celestial dragons, this group of people that all commit these acts, instead of focusing all our ire on an individual who is just one of many that do this exact thing. So I feel like if we find out who the dad is, then we'll be inclined to look at the one and say justice on that one. But I think what Oda is trying to do here is he's trying to make us look at a group of people that all commit the same acts. It just feels more personal now because now we've seen it happen to someone that we care about. But I kind of want that projection to stay on the group and not narrow it down to an individual. Because again, the group does this. Jinny isn't an isolated case, and I kind of want our ire to continue to be focused at all of them. Anyway, this was a doozy of a chapter. It was very intense, it was very heavy, but it was also written in such an impeccable way between the flashbacks and the present day, and really drawing us into not just, oh my goodness, the celestial dragons, they're terrible, but getting to see the evilness in someone that we care about, seeing that on a personal scale, but at the same time balancing that with the goodness and the kindness and the gentleness and the love of Kuma, and remembering that the life of the individual is the most important thing, as well as promising us, I hope, or at least helping us to look forward to the fact that after all this, there is the future of Kuma and Bonnie getting to see the one that they've been waiting for finally begin the liberation that they've been promised. This was a 10 out of 10 chapter for me. It was painful. It was incredibly painful to read, but it was impeccable, I think. What did you think? How did you feel about the chapter? I would love to hear more of your thoughts on it. There's a lot to unpack here, so please help me unpack. I post videos every Monday and Friday on this channel, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays on the book channel, which is always linked in the description. I'll see you again soon. Bye.